Oh. Which I should probably realize we'll talk in board briefing about the Wilderness Trail, and I can talk to you about Commissioner Sleep. Okay, it is 9 o'clock. Debbie, are you ready?
I am.
Jamie? Okay. Good morning. Today is Wednesday, January 25th, 2023, and we'd like to welcome everyone to the board meeting. We'll call this meeting to order at 9 o'clock a.m. You can join today's board meeting via phone. Dial 971-254-3149. Conference ID 736-023-979#. Audio capabilities are listen only and are offered on a best effort for the public. Our meeting is also live streamed, and you can join us by going online to tctvonline.com and click on live broadcasts. Before we get started, I'd like to remind everyone to mute their phone. You can do this by pressing *6. Please unmute your phone when your agenda item is ready to be discussed. For those joining via computer, please unmute your microphone and turn on your camera when your agenda item is called. All others must remain muted with their cameras turned off. Thank you. Public comment. Those intending to provide public comment to the board may attend in person or email submissions to publiccomments@co.tillamook.or.us. Public comments received by 12 p.m. on Tuesday will be distributed to the board, posted online before the meeting, and become a part of the public record. You may also provide public comment virtually by registering ahead of time. To register, please email publiccomments@co.tillamook.or.us by 12 p.m. on the Tuesday prior to the meeting. Public comments can also be mailed to the Board of Commissioners Office, 201 Laurel Avenue, Tillamook, Oregon, 97141. For more information on public comment options, please visit the Board of Commissioners webpage. Okay, do we have anyone signed up in the room, or has anyone registered online for public comment?
We have one person signed up in the room.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, we have called this meeting to order, so we will welcome everyone and request that anyone in the room sign the guest list. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Yamamoto, please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, we will start this morning with public comment. Yeah, come on up, April. Good morning.
Good morning.
As usual, we will do 2 minutes for public comment.
2 minutes now. Good morning. I'm April Bailey. I'm resident of Mescalin. Lived in South County most of my life. So on item number 7 today, in the order of a matter of a notice to intent to award a contract for coordinated homeless response project. I noticed this is the X4 organization, and my concern is not as much as how much funding, although it's a sizable grant from the county, $120,000 plus. My concern is who is X4. I looked them up. It looks like they work largely with very large cities, and they basically form community groups to talk to people. What do they do? And who's funding them? The funding is really interesting. Some of the funding comes from Morris Singer, and a huge amount of their contributors are people like the Global Development and the Health Initiative, which had a heavy hand in some of the COVID response. I think you can understand why people in our community would be concerned about these outside monies coming in and influencing our local homeless problem. Here's the thing. If my family's hungry, if we need a place to live, I'm going to contact my neighbors. And my concern is why we keep looking to way outside organizations on how to solve local problems. I don't know if you've been to the homeless encampment. Bergen's posted a video recently. But I have a feeling if you go and see the issue personally, you might come up with different solutions. You were elected to come up with local solutions. I'm really concerned about outside organizations being used to come up with the solutions. I actually do believe you guys could figure this out with help of your community partners, like the people who are dealing with it, like the Sheriff's Department, the local businesses around the area that are largely dealing with the crime related to this homeless community, especially in town. So I would really hope that as you talk about this issue, you explain more about this group what you actually think they're going to accomplish in solving this problem, and why you think it's worth giving our money to this organization that's already well funded by a lot of interesting groups. Again, I don't want global networks coming in and solving problems to a Tillamook County homeless problem.
Thank you. I hope you'll stay for the discussion.
I
I
will.
look forward to answering any of those. Thank you. Okay, any other public comment in the room today? Okay, hearing none, we do not have any non-agenda items today, so we will go ahead and move right into our legislative administrative agenda. And we will start with item number 5, discussion and consideration of amendment number 1 to intergovernmental agency number 3219 with Barney Reservoir Joint Ownership Commission, BRJOC, for the maintenance of an emergency warning system for E.S. Mills Dam. We have Randy Thorpe, our emergency manager, with us this morning. Good morning, Randy.
Good morning. A little bit of history. We are amending a 1998 agreement.
Ooh.
So meeting with the people on the other side of the hill, we decided that maybe after 22 years, we probably ought to update the agreement just a little bit. The main things that we would change with the agreement is there was a lot of items that both the county was going to do and that they were going to do as far as setting up the alert system and going forward. Most of those items, well, almost all of those items have been completed. So therefore, they don't still need to be in the agreement that, you know, they're going to do this if they've already done it 20 years ago. So we've updated the agreement to basically reflect what we're doing right now. The reasons why there is an agreement, for those who may not know, is that the E.S. Mills Dam, which is Barney's Reservoir, is located in Washington County, but it drains down the Trask into Tillamook County. So if there's any type of emergency situation with that dam, the water will come down the Trask and end up in Tillamook Valley. So therefore, that's why there is this type of agreement. We do have sirens set up, evacuation sirens. I think there's 5 of them through the Trask River area. They're maintained, were put in by the BRJOC. The Barney Reservoir Joint Commission is who put those in, and they actually maintain them. We test them once a month. They do that with an agreement with our 911 communication center. And what I've done is that I provided them with names and lists of people that are within that area. Of course, according to the agreement, I've set up our alert system that we have through Tillamook Alerts to alert people if there happens to be any issues with that dam. So that's what the agreement is basically for, is just basically says that they'll maintain the sirens and that I will keep them informed of who's there, and that, through us, their agreement with the 911 center, they will be tested, and I have been told they are definitely tested once a month. So, and hopefully we'll never have to actually use them, but it's all there. So this is the updated agreement with an amendment that we have. So we can answer any questions you may have with it.
Perfect. Thank you, Randy. I'm just going to comment quickly first. Having lived on the Trask for the majority of my 20 years here, I can affirm that those sirens are tested. We did hear them. I think it was Monday mornings, and I forget what time exactly, but Monday mornings they were tested. So if I was still at home on Monday morning of that one time a month, you could count on hearing the sirens. The other comment that I would make is I read in the agreement that they were going to get GIS mapping of everyone who would be impacted should there be a dam failure. And I was curious if those folks were going to be notified, or if there was some way for people to know. I mean, we knew because we lived right on the banks of the river that it was highly likely that we better head for higher ground quickly, but I am curious how it spreads into the valley until over the riverbanks. And is that information, because it sounded like there was a model and people
Yes,
were
there
going
is.
to identify who.
What I've done is through our alert system is with a software company called Everbridge. It's where we send out our alerts. And with that, I've actually set up 3 different polygons for down through the Trask for alerting. I'm able to, identify those residents that need to know within a few minutes and then just on down. And so I'll be able to send out different alerts depending on, starting at the very top, which need to probably just get high ground because they'll never get out of the canyon. And then the alerts will be different for those down further that can probably get out of the canyon. So we have set that up, and it's through, it is a GIS system, and so it's all been polygoned out and ready to do those alerts.
And if I were to live in that corridor, where would I find that information if I just wanted to know?
Know what?
Know how much time I would have once I heard the
That's,
sound of the alarm?
again, what we're working on is to try to come up with some more information there, because the original information is, of course, a long time ago, and there's a lot of new people there. So I'm working with Heather Knapp over, and she's one of the representatives of this consortium, and we're coming up with some public service type of information to get out, because that question was raised, is there's a lot of new people. Yes, I have their contact information, but we're trying to get something to where we can actually give them out some information and actually hold a series of kind of open houses over here in the county to alert people and just let them know, what's going on there. We do have another dam issue down south, and so hopefully we'll be doing the same thing down there along the Nesquin River. But that's a good point. We identified that as a need, and so that's what we're working on right now, is to come up with something joint. So I'm not sending out something, and the Barney's Reservoir Consortium is sending out something different. We want to make sure it's a joint release of information. So
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think it would be wonderful for the potentially impacted residents to just have that information. It was something in all my time living there that it was a struggle, and I never did get clear information about how much time I would have from the sound of the siren and whether I should be running up the hill or down the road. So
right.
I look forward to our residents having the benefit of the knowledge that is available on that modeling to know what they can expect.
Right, and that modeling is fairly recent, so it's really good. And and that they just updated their plan last year, and that's how I set up my alert zones, was on run uphill and then down, but we need to make sure the residents understand that too.
Correct.
So, and that's what will come through these public announcements that we're working on.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Commissioners, other questions? Sorry to monopolize that one.
That's okay.
Thank you for your input, because it's very helpful to hear from somebody who lived right on the Trask about you knowing there were sirens, but not knowing exactly what it meant to you or what the timing was. So that's excellent. So Randy, I wanted to share that some years ago, I don't remember exactly how many, but say 12-ish, I had a conversation. I worked for the Headlight Herald, and I had a conversation with Rachel's predecessor, Paul Levesque, and I asked him, what are your biggest concerns for Tillamook County? And he said, something that keeps me up at night is the fact that there are 2 water cannons pointed at Tillamook County. And that's what he was talking about. He was talking about the Barney Reservoir, which is at the top of the Trask in Washington County, and the McGuire Reservoir, which is at the top of the Nestucca in Yamhill County. And so I wanted you to speak to, are we, as part of the agreement, knowing whether or not they are doing regular checks? I don't know what kinds of checks they do on dams, but regular checks to make sure that the dams are seismically sufficient to withstand an earthquake, because the last time the failure happened was in the early 60s. There was an earthquake, it might have been 64, or 3, or 5. And it damaged the dam at the McGuire Reservoir, and there was a massive flood down the Nestucca. So it has happened, and so tell us about our agreement with those organizations about their seismic stability.
On that, where that's included is that they have a emergency operating plan basically for each of the dams that they update periodically, and in that it actually specifies when, how, and who's going to do the types of inspections on both of the dams. They have the visual inspections that are done, say monthly by their people there, but then they do an overall good seismic test once a year up there. And they do send me the results of those tests. And so, and that's not part of the agreement, but that's in their operating plan that they have as far as emergencies there. And so they will let me know and update me on their inspections that they have. And if I have questions, I call them and they can give me the latest information on the inspections. But they are doing what they're required to do according to their own operation plan, their emergency plan on that. So they are doing the visual with their own people that are up there, you know, every day they're doing their visual tests. But then once a year they do a complete seismic survey of each of the dams in each of those areas on their stability. And luckily, the last ones that I got from last fall, both the dams are very structurally sound right now. So but that doesn't mean a nice little 7.0 earthquake is probably going to change that. But it's also very good, just to let you know, is that there's a really good working relationship with this county and with the Mills Dam, the Barney Reservoir people. It's great. They put on a few trainings that I've attended along with our 911 individual plus John Spence with communications, since we're all kind of involved. And so they are involving us all in their training that they're doing. They're having another training in March that they've invited us to. And so it's a really good working relationship with both of these companies on the other side of the mountain, because they realize that, yeah, their candidates pointed at us, not them. And so they want to make sure that Tillamook County feels a little bit more safe. Just for your information, there is sirens up on the Nestucca. Those are maintained by us through a contract. And John Spence is he's the lead on making sure he tests and makes sure that any repairs and things are needed. And if it's a major one, then that's in addition to our maintenance agreement that we have with them. That's in their agreement that we have, which is a little bit more newer than 98, so that one doesn't really need to be updated yet. So, and on here, if we get word of problems with the sirens, that's when we get a hold of them and they come in and they have a company they contract with to do the maintenance and the repairs. So,
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner?
Yeah, so Randy, this intergovernmental agreement is about the emergency warning system. The integrity of the dams is something that AOC Natural Resource Steering Committee has discussed several times over the years. It's my recollection that DSL, Department of State Lands, is actually the agency that's responsible for the integrity of these types of dams. We've gone around and around and around at AOC trying to get DSL to tell us exactly how often these inspections of these dams goes on, et cetera. So that's complicated, and I understand you're not involved with that. When it comes to this emergency warning system, I do have one question. Who turns on the sirens when it's necessary?
our 911 center here in Tillamook. They have a separate contract with the company over there that they will operate that. And that decision to put those sirens on can either be done by their people
Or whose people?
By the Barney Reservoir joint ownership. If they know that something's happening up there, they call the 911 center, they activate the sirens. If I become aware of it, I call the 911 center. And there's in their emergency plan that they have, there's the alert system on how it goes and where the contacts are made and who activates that alert system. And the county is definitely part of all that, if we notice something wrong, then we can automatically activate the siren system. But it is done through the 911 center. And if power goes down, I don't know what, we're going to have to go, and that's the only concern I have, is that if we do have a major failure throughout the county, that alert system is not going to work either, because everything's going to be down. So I'm not sure what the answer on that one is, on how to get that word through. But
Well, and I think that's part of those community meetings, at least in my opinion, the likelihood of what would cause a failure such as that to be catastrophic and immediate is going to probably be something like an earthquake. And so it's for people, just as we've all been told, if it's a major shake, know that there's going to be a tsunami coming. You're not waiting for a tsunami siren in that situation. If it knocks you to the ground, if it lasts more than 10 seconds, be prepared. Assume there's a tsunami and start acting as if, right? And I think similarly in those community meetings, it's that conversation that says, if it is a major shake, if, all of those same things, do what you know you're supposed to do related to the reservoir, whether that's head for higher ground or head down the road or whatever it is that you've learned in the community meeting. Do that thing on your own, even if you don't hear the siren. Because I think that was one of the, certainly removing the tsunami sirens was a very big community conversation. It really had a lot of people concerned, how will I know? And a lot of education was done around, you will know because there was a major earthquake, which you will know when there's been a major earthquake, right? This is not going to be a surprise to you. And you just need to act as if at that moment that the worst is happening, because we may at that point lose all communication. We are expecting that in the event of a Cascadia subduction zone earthquake, that we are going to lose communication. We are going to lose most of those, and people need to be aware, thinking about that, training for that, and knowing they're going to have to take care of themselves in those initial moments and make their decisions. So I think that's, for me, why those community meetings are extremely important. The dams are inspected. The latest report we have says they are very solid. They continue to be watched and inspected. And short of a catastrophic event like that, we assume that they will hold and or their communications will be in place. I guess, so it comes down to the sessions in the community and the importance of them.
One other question. So Rachel and Bill, I think you looked over this agreement. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Randy.
Okay, any other? Okay, great discussion. Thank you.
The
I
motion.
think we are ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, consideration of amendment number 1 to intergovernmental agreement number 3219 with Barney Reservoir Joint Ownership Commission, the BURJAC, for the maintenance of an emergency warning system for E.S. Mills Dam. I would move approval.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? I will just say I don't think BURJAC is meant to be pronounced. So here we go. There we go. Some acronyms are meant to be pronounced like CARE. Some acronyms like BURJAC are probably not. Okay, no further discussion. I will call for the vote. All of those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. I've been waiting for years for that model. Super excited. Okay, item number 6, discussion and consideration of an out-of-state travel request for Rochelle Phillips to attend the 2023 Preparedness Summit in Atlanta, Georgia, 4/23/23 to 4/28/23. And we have with us this morning Marlene Putman, the Administrator of Health and Human Services. Good morning, Marlene.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So yes, per county practice or requirement, I'm presenting this request for approval of the out-of-state travel for my Deputy Public Health Director, Rocky Phillips, to attend this out-of-state event in Atlanta, Georgia. It's called the 2023 Preparedness Summit. It will occur between April 24th and 27th. We're submitting it now just to take advantage of the early bird rates for registration, so that's why you're seeing it at this point. The purpose of this summit, I'm reading from their information here, and I think this full packet is attached, but I'm just going to take some blurbs, so you don't need to read the whole thing necessarily. As we recover from the prolonged pandemic response and begin to define the endemic phase of COVID-19, natural disasters, emerging infectious diseases, terrorist threats, climate issues, and the maintenance of all hazards plans, we can now re-examine these things. The theme for the 2023 Preparedness Summit is Recover, Renew, Reprioritizing All Hazards Preparedness. It will provide an opportunity to revisit pressing issues in preparedness and share resources, shape policies, and build skills to mitigate a variety of threats. The Preparedness Summit is the place for you to re-energize while gaining the knowledge, resources, and relationships necessary to prepare for and respond to public health emergencies. And there will be over 2,000 attendees who work in all levels of federal, state, and local government, as well as emergency management, volunteer organizations, healthcare coalitions, and academia. They'll share best practices, build partnerships, advance skill sets, and take away innovative solutions and practical strategies to address the vulnerabilities in our country's health security systems. So that's kind of the overview of what this is about. We haven't attended the Preparedness Summit, I don't even know when, not since I have been in this role. We have had emergency preparedness coordinators attend, and our coordinator, Ed Coulson, will be attending. And so we're asking for Rocky to be able to attend in person, make these connections, and work with our preparedness coordinator. The total cost for this is $4,158.55, which is a lot of money for an event. It is for 5 nights, and the majority of the costs really relate to travel, airfare, accommodations, etc. $660 is the registration, so the registration isn't huge. But this ability to attend an in-person event and make those connections we think is important, and we will use our preparedness training budget to cover the costs. It basically covers the bulk of our funding for emergency preparedness training, so most of the rest of the stuff will have to be virtual to attend, but we wanted to take advantage of this one this year to begin to kind of reach out and connect with some other local and federal and state government officials and other partners. So that is the full request and description for attendance for out-of-state travel.
Thank you, Marlene, appreciate that. Sean has raised her hand in the back of the room.
Good morning, Commissioner. Sean Blanchard, County Treasurer. I had a question about the rental car and the fee for the nightly parking it on a lot. If the conference is at the hotel, why are we getting a rental car when the hotel and the airport are only about 15 miles away?
I don't have all of the details specifically about the parking. I know there was a lot of discussion about getting parking and about a rental car to be able to have a place for parking. So I can follow up and ask the financial team what the situation is with the cost of the rental car and the cost of parking, but I do know there was some discussion about it with the ability to get to and from events in the area. So if you want to postpone it, we can do that, or you can approve subject to treasurer approval of the parking and remove that cost from it if we need to.
I just had that question as to why, if the conference was at the hotel, why they needed a rental car.
Perfect, so it sounds like there may be some events scattered around the region separate from, or the city separate from the hotel, but we can get confirmation. So Sean, would you be comfortable if we approved it pending that conversation that you would have around the rental car?
Yeah.
Or would you, okay.
Oh yeah, I don't disapprove of it. I just was questioning that expense. That was
Questioning
all.
its necessity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that, so.
Yeah, I'll check. My apologies for I don't have the detail on it other than the cost myself.
Sure, okay. I think that's a really conversation to have, I think, as we are looking into all budgets to say, are all expenses absolutely necessary? And I think this is part of that new scrutiny that we will be bringing to budgets in this budget cycle. So you get to be among the first where we say, wait a minute, what about this detail? So appreciate that. Other comments, commissioners?
Oh, I'm glad that Rocky can go to this. And when I read about it, I was thinking, oh, I wonder if you have a new staff person, because I didn't know that Rocky's name is Rochelle.
Oh.
So I just learned something. I'm thrilled that Rocky can do this, and it seems to be like the perfect use of emergency preparedness funds. So I think it's great.
I will concur. I'm sure it's going to be a great conference for Rocky. I'm sure she'll learn a lot.
Perfect. And I would agree. I will never forget something that Robin Watts said to me early in the pandemic, because she was supposed to retire right about the time the pandemic happened. And I think it was at one of the vaccine clinics, and I was getting my vaccine, and I was talking with Robin, and I said, you know, you're supposed to retire. What are you doing here? And she said, you know, I have spent my entire career training for a moment like this in public health when we would be needed for something like a pandemic. And she said, there's no way I could leave now knowing just the amount of need that exists and the fact that I am the person that's trained at this point to lead this public health effort. And that's really stuck with me, not only because of her commitment, but the realization that this is something you have to train for and be prepared for, that a pandemic is obviously a real experience now, but also that our public health had been training for it. This wasn't something that was completely off their radar, unexpected, or that we were unprepared for. So I think with Robin then taking her retirement as we moved through that pandemic and Rocky stepping in, recognizing that within public health, the training for an emergency is absolutely crucial. And so having her be able to go to this conference, interact with people who have been training for this for all different periods of time in their career, for her to learn best practices and make those connections is super important. So I definitely in support of her going.
Ready for a motion?
I am ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, consideration of an out-of-state travel request for Rochelle Phillips to attend the 2023 Preparedness Summit in Atlanta, Georgia, April 23rd through April 28th, 2023. Pending further discussion with the treasurer concerning rental car and parking fees, I would move approval.
And I second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, we will move on to item number.
Marlene.
Oh, thank you,
Thank
Marlene.
you.
Sorry, I was just rolling right along here. Item number 7, discussion and consideration of an order in the matter of a notice of intent to award a contract for the Coordinated Homeless Response Project. And we have TJ Fiorelli listed for this one. He is our housing coordinator and also is working very closely with me on the House Bill 4123 project. TJ, are you with us this morning? There we go. Normally we have
I am.
TJ.
Good morning, County.
Morning. Normally you're in the room, so I'm delighted to see you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
We can.
Great. So this morning what you have before you is an intent to allocate grant funds to a consultant who will be working virtually with Philemon County, all of our 7 cities, and CARE to operationalize our strategic plan for the House Bill 4123 Coordinated Homelessness Pilot Project. We have followed through with negotiations, and the dollar figure you see before you today is a dollar figure we expect to see in the contract that you will see for your final approval of this in a future meeting. I wanted to go ahead and make sure that you had this in front of you and start by asking if there's any questions on this, or if Commissioner Scar, you'd like to add any additional context besides what I've already included.
Sure, I would actually. We had a comment in the room this morning that I'd like to do my best to address. So the funding for this comes from a contract that we have with the state of Oregon that is specific to creating a coordinated homeless system. If the money can only be used as designated by the state of Oregon, that is House Bill 4123. And one of the activities required under House Bill 4123 is the creation of a 5-year strategic plan, with the expectation that if we are unable to complete that with our own staffing level, that we would use a consultant, which is what we are doing. So the money that is being spent on this has limited capability as what we can use it for. It must be for this project. As to X4 and why we chose X4, there were 2 pieces to this. The first one is that we have a relationship with X4. They were in our community since the end of my 2nd year. So during my 1st year as a commissioner, we were able to utilize their services free of charge due to a grant that they had received. And I think it was the Murray Foundation that was mentioned by our public comment. Forgive me if I got that name wrong. But it was through the Association of Oregon Counties. This company got the grant. They came to the Association of Oregon Counties and said we would like to assist some counties in doing a facilitated community process. So we were fortunate to be selected through the AOC process to receive the services of X4 free of charge. X4 had created a new community engagement strategy, and they were looking to pilot it in some counties, and so we were delighted. We were able to utilize them. X4 came to our community and worked specifically with myself, with CARE, with other agencies in the community, including Tides of Change, Tillamook Family Counseling. We had representatives from local churches. We had representatives from business. It was a stakeholder group that came together and talked about what the greatest needs were related to homeless services in our community. Two things rose to the top out of that conversation, and one of them was a coordinated services system. So that was, we knew we needed this, and our community informed that work. So I know one of the concerns was we didn't want people coming in from outside to tell us how to solve the problem. So I'm very excited that X4's job is to help us come together and have fruitful conversations, and that we have experience with them doing exactly that. So we identified we needed low barrier shelter as well in that initial work with X4. We then had those projects kind of working in the background, so when the state money became available, we were able to apply for it related to the coordinated homeless services, and were awarded in part because we had done this prior work with X4 that indicated the greatest need in our community really came around establishing a continuum and coordinated services. So when it was time to do this piece of the project, we put out a request for proposals as is required in the county's process. We alerted X4 that we were asking for proposals. We also published it in the Business Journal, Daily Journal, Daily.
It's in the notice of report.
Perfect.
Describes all of the.
Yep. So we follow that, posting in the Daily Journal of Commerce as we do with all of our RFPs, hoping that we would receive a number of responses. We in fact only received one response, which was X4, which, again, we have a relationship and we feel confident in what they bring to the table. The other thing that was mentioned in the comment this morning was related to if we visited the homeless camps and talked to the sheriff, we would know. So I'm pleased to share that part of the system that TJ has set up specifically to do not only the initial planning, but actually to operationalize the plan and can continue the project over the next 5 years includes 2 advisory committees. One of them is the Local Government Advisory Committee, which is called something other than that, but Community Board, and it includes representatives from all of our cities, again, as is required in House Bill 4123. The second is our advisory board of our agencies, which is also required in House Bill 4123, and also included in that are a subset of stakeholder groups, specifically of which law enforcement is one. There's also a school stakeholder group. There is a mental health stakeholder group. There is, TJ would have to give me the rest of them. I don't have them off the top of my head, but all of those inform upward. What did I miss, TJ? What are the other? There are 8.
The McKinney-Vento liaisons, public health, Tillamook Family Counseling, and other behavioral health organizations, and then also groups like Tides of Change and those serving the Latinx community.
Perfect, thank you. And the other piece that's important in this contract and in House Bill 4123 is that we are required to and would want to anyway include lived experience, the voice of lived experience, and there are individuals who are either currently experiencing homelessness or who have previously experienced homelessness that will be participating on these committees as well. It's very important to hear from the people for whom this is their experience as we choose solutions. So again, just to address the comment, solutions are not coming from anywhere outside of our community. The facilitation and the ability to bring people together and have fruitful conversation and then turn that into a written plan that will be acceptable to the state of Oregon is the work of our consultant. I hope that I hit on the high points, and I would invite any other questions, please reach out to me separately from the meeting, and I'm happy to address them. This is a very exciting opportunity for Tillamook County, and I think X4 is going to be a great partner for us. So, TJ, did I miss anything or misstate?
I think that was very thorough. Thank you so much, Commissioner Scarr, for filling in those details, particularly for the public.
Perfect, thank you. Commissioners, questions or comments related to this?
I look forward to the work. Strategic planning is very important work, and this is complicated because we'll be doing planning for the county and for the cities. And cities, of course, are independent governments, so typically the county does not do strategic planning with the cities. So this is new ground, and it's exciting, and it's important because, of course, we wouldn't want to have different plans throughout the county. So I think it's important work. I think we need a consultant to do it, and I appreciate the process.
And I would concur with everything that's been said to this point. We do, it's really a hidden problem in Tenement County. We do have a homeless problem. If you walk along the slough, if you go up into the forest, if you look at certain pullouts within Tillamook County, we definitely have a homeless issue. It is rather hidden. We've been working with the Sheriff's Office to a large extent, although what they can do in specific instances, we have been able to address the issue where it is really a public nuisance. Otherwise, it's very difficult for our Sheriff's Office even to become involved to move people on. So this type of a contract in coordination with the state of Oregon, with AOC, with the cities in Tillamook County, with many of the major groups in Tillamook County that are working on the homeless problem, I think this is terrific. And again, this money is not coming out of our general fund, there are so many ways, and we say this a lot, there are so many ways that Tillamook County leads Oregon. And this is another area that we can and will be leading in. I think this is a breath of fresh air, something that we really need to do, and hopefully we can help address our homeless problem, rather than just trying to ignore it. We need to try to make sure that we have a plan in place and we can do the best we can to make sure people have shelter. So I'm in full support.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, with that, I think we are ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, in the matter of a notice of intent to award a contract for the coordinated homeless response order number 23-008, notice of intent to award a contract, I would move approval.
I second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks, TJ.
Discussion and consideration of authorizing county council to sign participation forms related to the new opioid settlements. And we have Joel Stevens, county council, with us this morning. Good morning, Joel.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So I'm before you today to ask for authorization to be able to sign on to settlement agreements with 4 additional defendants in the ongoing opioid litigation. As the board probably recalls, Tillamook County, among many other counties and cities in Oregon, has been participating for several years now in nationwide litigation against opioid manufacturers and distributors related to the negative impacts of those drugs in local communities. And last year, we were able to reach a significant settlement with many of the defendants. That settlement included a negotiated agreement with the state of Oregon called an intrastate allocation agreement. And as you might recall, that involved 55% of funds coming into the state of Oregon go directly to local counties and cities with a population over 10,000 who participated in this litigation. The other 45% goes to the state, and they're developing a process to provide that money to local communities through a variety of grants and other things. So 4 additional defendants have entered into settlement agreements. This will add millions of dollars to the total pot of money coming to the state of Oregon. But the litigants, one of which is us, need to sign on to agree to allow these 4 defendants to become part of the settlement. And like the other settlements, it's structured in a way where there's an incentive for the litigants to have 100% participation. The more litigants that participate, the larger the funds that come to the state. So, and these funds, like the others previously that we dealt with last year, would be subject to the same Oregon intrastate allocation agreement. So 4 additional defendants, millions more dollars added to the pot, and we're setting up a digital signature process because there's so many litigants involved, whereby when the portal opens, litigants will be able to log in and join this agreement and allow these defendants to become part of the settlement. That portal hasn't opened yet, but I just wanted to go ahead and get approval from the board so that I could participate in that and sign off for the county once that portal does open. They want to have 100% participation among litigants as soon as possible, so I just wanted to be ready for that. And I expect that to happen in the next week or two.
Thank you, Joel, appreciate that. Questions or comments, commissioners? No questions.
Joel, I appreciate you keeping us in the loop as you continue to negotiate as one of our partners in this settlement. Unfortunately, this has a lot to do with the previous conversation we had about homelessness. Many of the homeless people in our communities across the state, across the nation, do have drug-related issues. And this is one of the big ones. So again, these are funds that are going to help us provide treatment to people that are addicted, especially the homeless population. But the opioid issue in Tillamook County and across Oregon and across the nation is more than just the homeless. We have so many people that have drug-related problems. I think this is going to go a long way to helping us to resolve those, to provide treatment, try to put people on the right path. So I'm in full support.
Thank you, and I am in support as well. I think one of the things that's just so challenging about the opioid crisis is where it began, and I'm sure I've told the story here before, but I always have to tell it. And that is, I remember sitting in a meeting with physicians, and one of the physicians, this is as the opioid crisis was unfolding, as they were beginning to put limits on how many opioids any particular doctor could prescribe at any one time, both in related to any one single patient as well as to how many patients on what they call their panel they can have that are currently being prescribed opioids. And the intent for all of that was to really reduce the amount being prescribed in our world, right? And so we were having this conversation, and the doctor said, boy, this is a real change from when opioids came out. He said, I remember at that time that we had opioid salespeople coming and talking to all the physicians, and we had management in the medical facility where he was at that time that required us to prescribe a minimum amount instead of a maximum. He said, this is something that was definitely pushed as a business model, and that's where a lot of these problems have come from. So I think, it just always sticks with me, the remembrance that these were pushed as a medical solution and pushed maybe in places I didn't even need to be. And then the second piece is the medical piece, which is there are receptors in your brain that are created by opioid use in certain people. And if you have a genetic predisposition toward that, you will then have you will need them. Your brain will not accept when you say, I don't need this. Your brain will say, yes, you do. And there's a huge number of people, and that's where we see people who have a knee replacement or a shoulder replacement or something where they or a bad car accident, and opioids were prescribed, and it was an accurate, appropriate prescription, but for them, their body's chemical response to the drug became one that was addictive. So we're really dealing with a crisis, and it's a crisis that crosses, while those experiencing homelessness are a part of that, and sometimes it's because that opioid use led them down a path that saying they can't live without it, and they put it above all other things, including work and family and so forth. In other cases, these are people who have full-time jobs and are doing their best to continue to survive and work in our world, but they're struggling. So this is really important, and we talk about millions and millions of dollars, but I do want to right-size that and let everybody know that in the first award that we received, we get $56,000 a year, I believe is the amount, and change. Sean's nodding her head back there as the treasurer. So we are working with the Our Tillamook Group to determine how to best deploy that $56,000 a year to really have the impact we want to, looking at the other funds that are coming into the county and trying to find that gap. To make sure we're doing the best we can with them to partner with other funds we receive. So I will really look forward to signing on to this, Joel. I'm excited. You know that I've been pushing on this since the day I started to say how much and when and how do we do good things with it. So I hope that some of those millions and millions come to us in slightly larger denominations. Not that we're not happy to have the 56, but more would be helpful, so.
That's a good point, Commissioner, and unfortunately, I don't know how much this will increase the allocation to Tillamook County yet. We're not going to know that until after we know how many litigants have signed on, but we expect to have 100% participation, that's the hope. And then after that, at some point, we should see a noticeable increase in the payments, but we just don't know how much that will be yet.
Sure. No, totally agree, but we'll take what we can get. Yes, please.
While I was listening to you, it reminded me of another story about when I worked at the Headlight Herald maybe 15 years ago. I had an interview with then Police Chief Wright, and I asked him, what do you think is the most serious problem in Tillamook? And I fully expected him to say methamphetamine, and he said prescription pain pills, which totally surprised me. So then that took me on a journey of learning about what was happening with prescription pain pills in Tillamook County. And it's just what you described, that people start using them for legitimate pain, become addicted, and then this entire criminal cycle comes about because people are selling pills, they don't have enough pills, they can't get more pills, they end up using heroin, and I didn't know. When I asked the question, I didn't know the answer, so it was really eye-opening to me.
Yeah, and I think that transition to heroin is a really important piece that people, if they're not familiar with the opioid crisis and they're not familiar with the medical things and the chemical things that happen in your body, that when we decided as a society that we needed to reduce the amount of opioids that were being prescribed, and we started putting in all of those rules about how much a doctor could prescribe and how many and all of those things, for people who were already in that opioid use disorder group, they lost their ability to receive the opioids that their brains are demanding. And heroin fits the same brain receptors. And I think that's something that a lot of times people don't realize. When you think about heroin, you think about somebody lying on a street corner, who has just made bad choices, right? But the reality is, if you have opioid use disorder and your doctor says, I can't give you any more, your body and brain will drive you to find a solution, and heroin works. And so people are able to get heroin on the street, and these are people that are working, have families, have lives, and they are also using heroin to fill that receptor. And people don't realize that. And unfortunately, long-term use of heroin then typically causes you to get into that space of not being able to function normally anymore, and you do end up with everything falling apart. This is serious, it's significant, it's here, it's now. The other piece of this that's very terrifying is the addition of fentanyl to both fake pills that are on the street and the heroin's on the street. And I took the Narcan training that was offered here at the county this last week, very important. But understanding and having that conversation that if you buy a pill from the streets, you need to expect that it has fentanyl in it. And unfortunately, it's an uncontrolled amount of fentanyl, most likely, which means you can either get the receptors in your brain filled the way you need, and you keep walking forward, or it will kill you. And it's a very dangerous time in our community. So I plug for getting the Narcan training, a plug for the opioid dollars, treatment dollars that we need to help people be able to work through this and get the other medications they need to fill those receptors in their brain, which allows them to stop using the dangerous ones. So, sorry, very deep conversation this morning, but as you can tell, these are things that are just super important for us in our community and important for people to know so that we can be part of the solution. I think we're ready for a motion.
Ready for a motion. Madam Chair, consideration of authorizing county council to sign participation forms related to new opioid settlements. I would move approval.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. All of those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thanks, Joel.
Thanks, Joel.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Moving on to item
Thank you.
number 9. Discussion and consideration of Secure Rural Schools and Community Self-Determination Act of 2000 certification of Title III expenditures by the participating county. Rachel Haggerty, Chief of Staff. Good morning, Rachel.
Good morning, Commissioners. The county receives SRS payments approximately annually, and we never know how much we're gonna get. It just hits the account, and the amounts vary quite drastically. There's only a few specific uses that we can use it for. For Tillamook County, it usually goes to search and rescue efforts on federal lands that the Sheriff's Office administers, as well as the Oregon Department of Forestry's Firewise program. That's the yard debris program that happens generally in the summer. So we have outstanding balances there. We have awarded grants that the Sheriff's Office and Oregon Department of Forestry continue to spend on, which is great. And as a requirement of these SRS payments, we are required to complete a certification. So for you today is the 2022 certification, and this is on a calendar year. The first amount, $233,094.91, is a combination of the cash balance in the county fund on December 31st of 2022, as well as, which includes outstanding grant awards that are part of that amount. The next block is the actual expenditures in calendar year 2022. The first amount is the amount drawn down by the Oregon Department of Forestry for the Firewise program in the amount of $61,654.77. That also includes, there's not a category here for the public noticing at the Headlight Herald, and so I've split that up between the categories that we have grants for. So part of the $61,000 includes Headlight Herald noticing, and then the third expenditure category for last year was for the emergency services equipment costs associated with the search and rescue efforts at the Sheriff's Office, and that's in the amount of $496.78 for a total expenditure last year of $62,151.55. So this is ready for your consideration, and if you approve, then I have a series of distributions of the information to the federal government.
Thank you. Comments or questions, Commissioner?
I'm grateful for Rachel's work. It's a cumbersome process, but I'm grateful that you're doing it. Thank you. They're important programs.
And I agree. So this is concerning federal timberlands that we have here in Tillamook County in the state of Oregon. U.S. Forest Service and BLM lands, and that includes ONC, Oregon California Timberlands, which I'm a board member of the ONC group. ONC works very hard to make sure that the federal government does not forget rural counties when it comes to timber harvest that used to occur to a large extent on U.S. Forest Service land, BLM land, and ONC land. ONC land is still doing pretty well. That's because this group is very active. But the ways that we can use the Secure Rural School, these Secure Rural School dollars is very limited. We're very fortunate that we can fund a lot of what search and rescue does, which is terrific. A lot of the money does go to firefighting issues with the state of Oregon, which is terrific. But I wish we could broaden the categories that we could utilize this money. We continue to remain with the balance. Rachel, you wanted to correct me on something, I'm sure?
Well, slight correction. We can now use it for broadband.
Ah, perfect.
Your allocations were already approved and awarded when that came along, but for our next round, that would be an option.
Okay,
so that is new.
great. Perfect. Thank you for reminding me about that. That's terrific. So this funding is important. We continue to fight for it. We keep hoping that the federal government and Senator Wyden and Senator Murphy work very hard on trying to get permanent funding for this, and unfortunately that has not happened. But as long as we continue to get it annually, I guess we can't complain too much. But having a secure, pre-funded amount that comes from the federal government on a regular basis. Senator Wyden, the last time, proposed putting together, taking a few $1 billion, setting it aside, and the interest payments on that would pay the Secure Rural Schools payments to the counties and state. That hasn't gone anywhere yet. We continue to hope. Because right now, again, every year we just have to stand up and fight for it. We have to go back to Washington, D.C. and testify before Congress, things of that nature. It's important funding for many rural counties, and Tillamook County is one. So again, I'm in full support.
Perfect, and I support this as well. I agree. We were talking, I think it was with Senator Merkley, and he was saying, one of the challenges is that if they fund it in a permanent funding bill, then that particular federal fiscal year, they have to set aside all the money it would take to fund it for as many years as they committed. And so that's the challenge of getting this long-term commitment to the bill. So it's a structural issue in terms of getting that long-term commitment. If they could, get it and be able to take it out of each budget year, we'd probably have a lot more luck. So federal processes, if we think county processes are cumbersome, thank goodness we're not the federal government sitting here today. There's enough of that. So I'm also in agreement and look for a motion.
Perfect. Madam Chair, in consideration of Secure Rural Schools and Community Self-Determination Act of 2000, certification of Title III expenditures by participating county. Again, this is paperwork that needs to be filed with the federal government. I would move approval.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, and we'll call for the vote. All of those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. So, do we have any board concerns today? With no board concerns, we are going to go into executive session, but before we do that, I will go ahead and read our meeting announcements, as we do not expect to make any decisions in executive session, and we would come out to ratify. This is informational. So, here we go. So, on my page, the commissioners will attend the Tillamook Light. Oh, we already did that, so I don't need to read that one again. Correct. The commissioners will hold a board briefing on Wednesday, January 25th, 2023 at 2 p.m. to discuss weekly commissioner updates. This meeting will be held in the Board of Commissioners Meeting Room 106 in the Tillamook County Courthouse, 201 Laurel Avenue, Tillamook, Oregon. The teleconference number is 1-971-254-3149. Conference ID 736-023-979 #. The commissioners will attend a public hearing on Monday, January 30th, 2023 at 9 a.m. to consider ordinance amendment request number 851-22-000402-PLNG to amend Article 5, Special Use Standards and Exception of the Tillamook County Land Use Ordinance, TCLUO, to include Section 5.110, to establish use and development standards for construction of an accessory dwelling unit on residentially zoned properties located within Tillamook County unincorporated communities. The meeting will be held in the Board of Commissioners Meeting Room 106 in the Tillamook County Courthouse, 201 Laurel Avenue, Tillamook, Oregon. The teleconference number is 971-254-3149. Conference ID 887-242-77 #. The Tillamook County Compensation Board will meet on Monday, January 30th at 1 p.m. The meeting will be held in the Board of Commissioners Meeting Room 106 in the Tillamook County Courthouse, 201 Laurel Avenue, Tillamook, Oregon. The teleconference number is 1-971-254-3149. Conference ID 736-023-979 #. Okay, so we are going to go into executive session under what number, Bill?
192-6602D, that's to consult with your labor folks, and 2H, that's to consult with counsel about threatened or pending litigation.
Wonderful, thank you. We will recess this meeting at 10:03 a.m.